evaluates 4 action alternatives and a no action alternatives for plutonium disposition. These include options for disassembly of pits and converting the plutonium metal into an oxide form for disposition. It also includes options to disposition 13.1 metric tons of surplus plutonium, 7.1 metric tons of it being pit plutonium, and 6 metric tons of it being non-pit plutonium. In addition to that, this SEIS also evaluates irradiating MOX fuel in commercial nuclear reactors.
First of the speaker and the second of the person to follow. In view of the number of folks who've indicated an interest in speaking tonight, I'm going to ask that folks confine their remarks to 4 minutes. Usually with this number of people signed up, it would be 3, but I know a few folks have saying
today. By my estimation, the plutonium fuel program, the MOX program, has about $17.5 billion left to be spent, whereas disposing of the plutonium as waste is on the order of about $4 billion. Now, don't take those estimates from me. I encourage you to ask DOE and NNSA, but the problem is you won't get an answer. Even though this is a federal government program, they should know what the life cycle costs are, but they will not tell the public how much money is being spent on the program. We require testing from 2019 to 2025, which impacts the operation of the MOX plant at Savannah Riverside. In this document before us, there's essentially no discussion of the required testing. And TVA, DOE, and AREVA are just hoping that they can license this new fuel form without any type of testing whatsoever. And you, the public, in my opinion, shouldn't stand for that given the safety implications. So, in conclusion, I would encourage TVA to stick with the no MOX preferred alternative, which was presented in the slides and which is in the document. TVA should not be pressured before the end of this year to make a decision to use this new type of fuel, given the risks it poses and the costs. Peter Swofford was quoted, who's the chief nuclear officer, was quoted in the paper today, saying it's way down the road about TVA's decision. Yet DOE is trying to twist TVA's arm to make a decision to use this material now. I think that's horribly misguided. There's not enough information because they haven't conducted a test in Browns Ferry. The public hasn't been involved in a TVA environmental impact statement. Therefore, TVA should stick with its preferred alternative, which is no use of mixed oxide fuel at this point. And DOE should revisit the option to dispose of plutonium as nuclear waste. Thank you very much.
Nuclear reactors. The commercialization of nuclear weapons, plutonium, as a fuel for commercial nuclear reactors is compounded insanity. Plutonium fuel weakens the reactor pressure vessel due to embrittlement of the metal in the primary containment as a result of a high neutron flux. At Cabri, France, when AREVA was testing the MOX fuel, testing demonstrated plutonium MOX fuel has a higher failure potential than uranium oxide fuel, and there is also a potential for fuel rod rupture at a comparable burnup. Now, all these points I'm making, I make reference to all the points, and most of the reference are peer-reviewed material. Plutonium reactor fuel can be utilized to fabricate a nuclear weapon. The use of plutonium as a commercial nuclear reactor fuel increases the risk of theft and diversion of nuclear materials. The threat of terrorism and nuclear weapons proliferation is greatly increased. Utilization of plutonium and commercial nuclear reactor fuel serves one purpose: the financial benefit of the commercial nuclear power industry. Taxpayers are paying for the construction of the plutonium MOX fuel facilities to benefit the nuclear power industry. The use of plutonium fuel at Browns Ferry, Alabama, or Sequoia, Tennessee, compounds the insanity of utilizing the dangerous high-risk nuclear fuels. Both reactors are old, and in the case of Browns Ferry, the reactors are defective GE Mark I reactors, which are under increased scrutiny by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Weapons-grade mixed oxide fuel is high risk and has failed in previous testing at civilian nuclear power reactors. The use of ex-warhead plutonium imposes a significant increased health risk to the public if an accident occurs. And that health risk increase is approximately 26% for latent cancer fatalities. The solution, which is recommended for all plutonium waste materials as indicated in the National Nuclear Security Administration Draft Environmental Impact Statement regarding plutonium weapons material and waste, is glass vitrification, not the plutonium mixed oxide fuel manufacturing.
Is we need to make sure that it's put in a secure form and a secure place. We can't just take it out and say, oh, now the job's done. And we advocate for vitrification. We think that those glass logs put into disposal is the way to go, and that this boondoggle of mixed oxide plutonium is bringing it back in. It's recirculating it into our environment and into the risk factors involved with plutonium itself. This is a dangerous way to get our lights turned on. There are much more reasonable alternatives now. Solar has been less expensive. Solar has been less expensive than nuclear for a couple of years now. And the new reports from the NREL show that Tennessee alone is capable of producing enough rural utility solar for 2.2 million gigawatts hours of solar power just in Tennessee alone. I just want to say that this is a public health issue, and the MOX fuel risks seem to far outweigh the benefits.
And although I'm living in Knoxville now, I grew up around here. I was in Huntsville last year when the tornadoes came through. We were without electricity for about a week. Browns Ferry was also without electricity for about a week. Fortunately, unlike at Fukushima, the diesel backup generators did come on at Browns Ferry. Now, the Browns Ferry's infamous safety record, of course, began way back in 1975. I'm sure y'all are aware of this, big fire, lots of damage. It continued on for several decades, and recently, I guess in October of 2010, they found a valve that apparently hadn't been operating for like a year and a half. NRC gave them a red finding, which is the next step before you close the plant down. There's only been a handful of those issued in the last decade or so. So, and they're still operating under this red finding. So clearly, Browns Ferry is not the place to try out an unlicensed, untested, and potentially dangerous new nuclear fuel source. So where will the DOE try it? And there's no provision for the disposal of the MOX fuel after it's been run through the reactor. So this preferred alternative is not really an alternative. We at SAE strongly recommend the immobilization as the preferred alternative. And finally, we would like to specifically request that the additional costs that are going to be borne by TVA customers as a result of pursuing the MOX option be shared with the public and compared to alternatives, especially energy efficiency, demand reduction, and renewable energy resources.
Right. 45 miles downstream from Browns Ferry. I'm here to speak against the use of mixed oxide fuel in TVA's aging reactors. I read that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission regards mixed oxide as a new fuel form, which has never been used commercially. It's a fuel that has never been proven safe inside of reactors, and it's predicted to burn hotter than normal. And where does DOE want to burn this new unproven fuel? In Browns Ferry, with its aging Fukushima-style reactors.
During this dialogue, with all the facts that have been presented, and after talking to the DOE representatives, I heard two conflicting statements made. One, someone told me that the Duke experiment number 2 kind of was a dismal failure, and they had some trouble extracting the rod out of the position that it had been in, and they decided not to go ahead with the third phase of that experiment.
This is a classic government boondoggle. It has been from the get-go. Even during the height of the Cold War, when all this plutonium was made, it was at great expense both to the federal government, to us, the taxpayers, and to the environment. Read about the environmental troubles around Rocky Flats, which was closed down. It was actually raided by the FBI and the EPA and shut down. But that's where these pits were put together, many of them. And so at great expense with private contractors, big business, like the previous speaker said, this is a government handout to big business in a big way. And plutonium has been talked about, how dangerous it is, how awful it is, breathing it. But the expense of it, I did a little Google search today. It said the free market, if you could actually buy plutonium, it'd be $4,000 a gram. That works out to be $3,584,000,000 a ton that our government paid to produce this stuff. And now the insanity is we have to spend billions to take it apart.
We can take this thing that we made enormous amounts of money from, and Don Safer, thank you, I want your stats on the amount of plutonium. This plutonium is worth billions, and I think this is all about money. This is protecting our investment. And that's why we can't stand to be thinking about vitrification and immobilization, which is what my organization and as part of Alliance for Nuclear Accountability, we support. I think MOX is a really bad idea. And one thing that I'd like to just bring up that hasn't been mentioned much tonight are the people who live around it. As you know, Savannah Riverside is 310 square miles around. It sits 26 miles on the Savannah River, and it is in South Carolina, but it's directly across the river from Augusta, Waynesboro, Burke County. The downwinders and the downstream people in Burke County are mostly poor. 52% of the whole county is African American. When they moved the 8 towns to make Savannah Riverside, they never even told the people in Burke County that they might have something to be concerned about. The air, I would say that from Savannah Riverside, the river itself, the crops, the cattle, the wells, all of that. People around these places have suffered a lot, and it's really interesting to hear your stories about Browns Ferry. That's why we wanted to come. It really is amazing to me that we're taking these billions of dollars, or $17.5 billion, that this MOX facility has gone from $3 billion now to $5 billion, and it's going to go on and on and on. And yet our Department of Energy can't even see fit to give $600,000 or $1 million to provide sampling, monitoring, and testing for the people who live around the Savannah Riverside in Georgia. We've been fighting for that for 8 years. Thank you. The environmental justice issues in this book are sorely lacking. There's many of the impacts that are sorely lacking. And I think it's about time that DOE started thinking about less about the contractors, the boosters, the international, Westinghouse, Mitsubishi, Honeywell, Toshiba, and all of them, and start thinking about really cleaning up this waste, really taking care of the citizens that live up here. That is the mission at Savannah Riverside. We don't want this stuff. We don't want it coming here to your reactors. It doesn't have, we have no customers. NRC hasn't given it a license. It's ridiculous. And although the 5.5 hours was long, I'm glad I'm here tonight and that we made it in time for the comments, and thank you for listening.